25 years in CRM.
Aesop, The Body Shop, Avon International, Royal Mail, BMW, Compare the Market, EasyJet, Disney.
First degree in astrophysics.
I was the worst astrophysicist.
I want to start with why you were the worst.
So when you were recruited by Aesop to redefine their CRM vision, where did you start?
My role there was to help the brand continue the conversation beyond the store. And we often forget that there's a human at the other end of the website, app, email. You can under and over personalize. We often wouldn't personalize the communications that we sent out. In particular, if it talked about the brand, you should collect data as if you were packing for a holiday. Just pack your essentials. I call it minimum viable data. What's the least amount of data you need to collect to move a relationship on with a customer? It doesn't matter what you do there. As soon as you've gone, someone will stick a knife in your back.
What have you done wrong?
I hate the term CRM.
Welcome to episode 11 of CharleChats, the Ecommerce Podcast. My name's Nick. I'm the founder of Charle, a Shopify agency here in London. And I'm so excited to welcome you to our home for some very open, honest, and real conversations with some absolute A players in e-commerce right now. So without further ado, let's do this. First degree in astrophysics, 25 years in CRM, and you've just released your first book, Jan.
All true, but I can legitimately say that I was the worst astrophysicist ever to come out of the University of Birmingham. I hate the term CRM, and my book is a book about nothing.
Nothing.
I mean, I feel like these are quite big things that we've got to unpick here. Like, where do we even start?
I want to start with why you were the worst astrophysicist. Why is that?
Good start.
Well, women, but I got to the end of my sixth form. I didn't really know what I was going to do when I left uni. So I decided to pick a course that was interesting. And at the time, there were only 5 universities that offered physics with astrophysics. The cover I remember I've still got the cover of the prospectus, and that just enticed me into doing it. I was interested in astronomy, went off to do it. About halfway through, I realised I'm not going to do anything with this degree. So there's no conviction for me to kind of go, I want to get it first because I'm going to work for NASA or the European Space Agency. So I got my degree. And the experiments that we ran during my project work in the third year kind of led me to believe that I was probably the worst astrophysicist ever to come out of the University of Birmingham, which is why then my first job out of university was as a second-hand car salesman, which leads you up naturally to a career in CRM. Data and personalization. I'm sure you'd agree.
I mean, my degree's in paramedic science, so...
Well, the thing is,
photography over here, so here we are in e-com.
And you'll love this because I start talking about behavioural targeting. But as a second-hand car salesman, I'd be there at the weekend waiting for the punter to turn up. Usually a man at the time in those days, and they'd bring the car, and it was my job to give them a reasonable valuation on that car they wanted to trade in. So we do the normal data collection points. I look at their logbook, number of miles they've done, number of users, number of owners of the car. I look at the tires, look at the inside of the car. But the one thing that really was a really important data point for me was I got them to open the boot of the car. I looked inside the boot, and if the boot was devoid of clutter, had been vacuumed really, really well, I knew that their intent was to do a deal that weekend. Right? Yeah. So I knew that they wanted to do something that weekend. So I spent more time with them. If it turned up and the boot of the car was as cluttered as mine, tire kicker. I didn't spend much time with them. So behavioural targeting on a car lot 30 years ago. So it was valuable, right? Valuable.
Do you know, I actually take a similar take home from like my job as a paramedic before I went into e-commerce, because I actually think to scale up an e-commerce agency, you've got to be able to talk to people really easily. You've got to be able to understand emotion quite well in terms of the people that you're dealing with. Yeah. Similarly, from sales to working with challenging clients, and actually then all the way through to e-commerce in terms of delivering something that's going to engage people.
It's funny, but we often, in the work that we do, we often talk about the technology, we talk about the data, And we often forget that there's a human at the other end of the website, app, email, app message. So I think that understanding human behavior is kind of fundamental to everything that we try and deliver as marketeers. I often talk about this idea of I call it thick and thin data, right? So the thin data is the data that you might pick up from an e-commerce website or someone's interactions with an email. You kind of know, you can see what they're doing. But the thick data is understanding the individual, understanding their intent and what they're trying to do. So as an example, I used to did some work with a big DIY firm who had links with, they had an extra card running at the time. So we could tell when, if someone bought a sample pot of paint, it'd go through the system, alarm bells would go off in the background, and we would try and sell them some more paint because we thought, they're going to decorate a room. The real thing that we were interested in was actually how can we spot people who are going to spend £10,000 on a new kitchen or an extension or a loft build before they've gone off and gone to Travis Perkins to do it or some other DIY firm. So we thought we'd look at the data, and there were a couple of things that we noticed that people were buying in advance of a £10,000 project. Do you know what that might be? You won't guess. I don't know why I bother asking you. But most people say, a tape measure or some paint. Okay. Right? No, it was a packet of birdseed or a Mars bar. And we kind of thought, well, how can that be? And we talked to customers, and we realised that if you put yourself in a customer's shoes, before they go off and spend 5-10 grand on a project, they go off and do the research. So they would go to B&Q, Homebase, Travis Perkins, and do the research. While they were there, they'd often buy something that was completely nothing to do with the project, right? And actually wouldn't go into one of those stores to buy that product. So you wouldn't normally go into a Homebase or a B&Q to buy a packet of birdseed or a Mars bar, or at the time, DVDs that you'd buy at the till. So we kind of thought, hold on a second, that's kind of like a data point that's worth exploring. So again, that thick data piece is understanding what the customer, what they do at that point, and then you layer in the data that you pick up through transactional and behavioural data points, touch points, to make sense of what the customer is doing.
And Jan, why do you hate the term CRM?
Well,
I've got to unpick this.
Well, you have to remember that the term CRM really came from the software industry, and essentially it started off from people selling technology to manage business-to-business relationships. So if we take the three words in the term CRM, there's only one word that's important: customer. In reality, not many customers want a relationship with a brand. If you have that kind of brand, you're lucky. Yeah. Most people just want to know when things are on sale. Do you have it my size? Do you have it my color? That's not a relationship. So, and then even if they do want a relationship, managing a relationship, you don't manage a relationship. So I think that it's more about customer. So thinking about customer. So I think it's important to have customer teams looking after CRM, if you like, looking after the retention, because that should be the focus. So that's why I hate CRM, because of that RM bit in it.
And for, those listeners that, with so many kind of like buzzwords and titles now, marketing managers, e-commerce managers, CRM managers, and so on, and sometimes we even see that actually they get used interchangeably, probably without much knowledge of what they're supposed to actually, the main responsibilities would be. But for your experience, what would you say the responsibilities truly are in terms of, heading up a CRM team or actually running CRM, to be honest, from an e-commerce perspective? So
I think that if you kind of need, bizarrely, even though I've worked in this space for, 20, 25 years, both agency and client side, people have to stop thinking of themselves as CRM practitioners or data practitioners or even e-commerce practitioners. You probably need to think slightly more like a brand manager, because for me, your CRM program, your loyalty program is actually the bridge between the brand promise and the customer. It's CRM is there to deliver using data on a customer need that you've identified through collecting data by understanding your customers, and then delivering to that need. Yeah. So think about what the brand would do at that point. So, for example, I often get asked in the e-commerce world or the CRM world or the personalization world, should I always personalize? And my stock answer to that, and I always have it as a big slide when I'm presenting, my stock answer to that is yes, no, maybe, sometimes. Because actually, you need to think about what the brand would do at that point with the customer and what the customer wants. So, when I was working at Aesop, which is an amazing brand, we often wouldn't personalize the communications that we sent out. In particular, if it talked about the brand, because the brand is who we were. So why would you want to try and dilute that message or give people different spins on it? Because that's who I am as a brand. But when it came to product, 100%, right? You'd want to personalize, because in particular, if you're selling skincare and you notice that a customer has bought the cleanser and the toner, you will want to use data to deliver the right messaging about the right hydrator, moisturizer that goes with those two products. So think more about what the brand is wanting to deliver, and also obviously think about customer. So the term that I use there is, personalization without purpose is pointless. We often get wrapped up in the idea that we've got lots of data, we've got amazing technology these days, so we should hyper-personalize our experiences and content. And that's another word I hate, right, just for the record. Hyper-personalize. If you look up in the dictionary, hyper usually means an excessive amount. No one wants to hyperventilate, do they? So again, it's understanding what is the right level of personalization that you want to deliver for a customer. I think you can under and over personalize. And if you've got the data and you're not satisfying a need, and you've got the data to do that, then you're doing the customer and the brand a disservice. And often you can over personalize. I worked for a while with a sports broadcasting brand, and the brand managers or the marketing managers said to us, well, we no longer want to personalize based on the fact that you're a subscriber, and not only that you're a subscriber to our sports channels and also that you watch football. We want to subscribe to the fact that you're a Manchester United or a Liverpool fan, all the way down. We were unsure. I was agency side at the time. I said, well, we'll do some tests. And so we did that. So we moved the personalization, we ramped it up so that we were talking to you about the fact that we thought you were a Manchester United fan or a Liverpool fan. And engagement bombed. And then, so again, thinking about the customer, so we went back and we talked to customers and we thought about this a bit more. And then we realized that in reality, the reason subscribers had come to the broadcaster was because of the breadth of sport that was on offer. Yeah. So here we were as a marketing outfit now pushing you down a road that you didn't really want to go down. Mm-hmm. If you'd wanted Manchester United content, you'd have signed up for my MUTV, not for the general sports package. Mm-hmm. And then we also looked at the MPS questions that the group was setting. And one of the MPS questions was, are you happy with the breadth of content that we're sending you? So all of a sudden, here we were in the marketing team thinking, but we can personalize this stuff. We have the ability and the technology to do it. But you were doing something that was contrary to what the overall brand proposition was, which was breadth of content. Mm-hmm. So again, it's finding the right balance between, what you want to deliver as a brand and what the customer wants.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I was in a client meeting not so long ago. So they were exploring with like Klaviyo segments, and what was really interesting, what you'd think is there's like really tailored content to the right customers. They're going to love it and engage with it. He literally sat in this meeting and was like, they all did absolutely shite. And the ones that did really well were like our scattergun emails that would just show everyone the same thing. They were the ones that like had the most revenue, the most people actually clicking on them. Now, that's not always going to be the case, of course, because it depends on, like you were mentioning, around whether it's like breadth of content or whether we're really tailoring a specific product that might not be relevant to certain types of people. But it's because we've got that tech that we can gain that data on people, and they've ticked a box to say they like this, or they purchased a certain product from a collection within the last, 3 months. Doesn't mean they're not going to actually be interested in that wider.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it depends on the brand, the organisation that we're doing it. But I think sometimes you have to think about the customer mindset. Often, when it comes to, you'll have customers who will have delayed a particular spend or are bringing forward a spend from Christmas or Black Friday because they want to have that deal. So they're looking for a specific product or product set. There are some customers who just want a deal, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's Black Friday. If a deal stands out, I'm going to do it. So it's horses for courses right there. I don't think there's a stock answer for everything that we do. So you just have to be a little bit smarter about it, and test and learn. Obviously, I mean that's a bit of a mantra that most people in my industry have. But fundamentally, I think it's really important. You can't. We often think we can cut and paste from a different organisation. It's not always the case. I remember when talking about my Aesop days, we'd have marketing managers come up to me and say, we want to collect birth dates. And I would say, well, what are you going to do with that birth date? Because we're not going to send them a happy birthday email because that's not the brand. The brand wouldn't do that. And the marketing manager would say, well, but we did that at brand X. He said, but we're not brand X, right? So why? So if you're not going to use it for birthday emails, what else are you going to use it for? Yeah, nothing. All right, so that's one less question we can ask the customer, is there? Yeah, because I think I like this idea of. It's funny, yesterday I was speaking to someone and they were describing it as, when you're collecting data, you should collect data as if you were packing for a holiday. Yeah, so you just pack your essentials, like you pack what you need for the holiday. I call it minimum viable data. So what's the least amount of data you need to collect to move the relationship on with a customer, or to satisfy that customer's desires and wants, right? Why am I asking them 15 questions when in reality I just need 3 to move the relationship on? When we're collecting data in stores, we'd often have pushback from the. I love a kickback every now and again, but getting pushback from the retail team saying, well, we don't want to collect customer data because it ruins the customer experience. So again, to resolve that, we would go in with this idea of minimum viable data, which is, well, I'll tell you what, look, all we need to ask from the customer to set up a profile is their name and the contact email or mobile number. Because we know what they've bought, we know where they bought it, we know the time of day that they came in, we can even look at the credit card to find out where the credit card came from. So, whether this credit card was issued in China and they're shopping in a Covent Garden store, so we know that they're not British-based or UK-based. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff that already. So why try and collect more information from the customer? We just need name and an email address so that we can carry on the conversation. So I think we've talked about the fact that my first degree is in astrophysics. So I can legitimately say this stuff is not rocket science. Yeah, I think it should be. We overcomplicate things, and I think that we hear how amazing Netflix are and Amazon are with using data and personalization. You know what? That's Amazon and Netflix. When in particular for smaller brands that don't have that level of sophistication, there's no reason why you have to start in a complicated fashion. It's not. You don't have to boil the ocean. It costs you money, it costs you time. And in the majority of cases, the customer doesn't need it.
E-commerce is hard, and sometimes you have to trust your gut. But if you want to be the next Too Classic, your gut won't cut it. And that's where Triple Whale comes in. Triple Whale makes profitable growth simple and helps you understand who your customers are, where they've come from, what they've purchased, and how much they've cost. Triple Whale is an analytics and attribution tool trusted by more than 10,000 brands on Shopify. Still not sure that Triple Whale's for you? Get started for free today with Trends by Triple Whale. This brand new benchmarks tool lets you measure Google, Meta, and TikTok ad performance against friends and enemies alike. Say no to your gut and say yes to better data. Explore the free Trends app today at triplewhale.com/e-commerce trends. I think we see that really regularly with our merchant base, even with other things like new features on site and changes that we're dying to do. And I'm actually thinking, well, is that actually going to move the needle in 3 months' time if we put all this time and effort into designing something new and developing it? Like, is this a vanity feature?
That's the beauty. I know you guys work a lot with Shopify, right? So I think that, that's one of the wonders of Shopify, which is you can go in there as a relatively young brand, small brand, but then you've got some huge players on there as well. But the functionality that it gives you, you're always going to be tempted to can I use this? Can I use that? Which is why I think that if you put customer first, and I know it's a well-worn term, but customer centricity, think about what the customer wants. Think about the customer journey. Are you overcomplicating it for the customer? And what's the value that I give them and the value that I give to the business as well on the back of this? Because, personalization and using these features, there's always a cost to it because you're spending time there, you're producing content. So are you really going to get the return that you're expecting?
So I'm going to dive really deep into your brain around user journeys and some of the things that you've seen work well in the past, Jan. But I want to know a bit more about you and your experience in the last kind of 25 years of working in CRM on a personal level. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about where you've worked, some of the things you've been up to.
So obviously, first degree in astrophysics, first job as a second-hand car salesman. And then I kind of really fell into the world of data and CRM, or direct marketing, as it kind of used to be called. I went to work for a customer service outsourcing organization, and I remember the client services director at the time saying he wanted someone with no experience in this space. And I thought, well, I've got no experience in this space, because he was tired of people saying no to something. So he wanted a fresh pair of eyes. I got that role. I used to look after the comms that went out to a whole bunch of store card customers and mobile phone operators. One of the things I learned in that very first role was it doesn't matter what you do there. As soon as you've gone, someone will stick a knife in your back, right? Because whoever's new or whoever has made a mistake and wants to plant the blame somewhere else, as you've left, they're going to do it. They're going to do it with you, right? So, and often, it doesn't matter what work you've done somewhere. The next person that comes in will want to stamp their mark on the organization. So they'll change what you've delivered. After that, I went to work for the Royal Mail for about 5 years. I was a product manager. I looked after some work I did as a direct marketing consultant, convincing FMCG companies to move some of their TV and press and advertising spend to this fancy new thing that was using data to drive communications. I was there for about 5 years, which was good, and then went to work for a tech company, and then really fell into freelance consultancy and working agency side. So I've got to work with a whole bunch of different agencies, advertising, marketing agencies, a couple of tech agencies as well. And what it's like when you work agency side, you get to work with a whole bunch of different brands. So I was really lucky to have worked with brands like BMW, Compare the Market, EasyJet, Disney, list goes on. All great. It's obviously hard work agency side, because you're always not only just satisfying existing customers, but there's always a pitch to win, and it's always a must-win pitch, as you know. And then about 5 years ago, I went, well, you can either describe it as going to the dark side or going to the light side. I went client side. And I got this massive opportunity to work with Aesop brand, who at the time, Aesop was part of the larger Natura & Co group. So there was Aesop, The Body Shop, Avon International, and Natura Latin America. The CMO at Aesop approached me and asked me to come in and reset their CRM vision, build out the business case to restructure the organization to deliver on that new CRM vision, and also bring in the new technology, which is actually a key learning point, and actually the way that I've described that. So the order you should do this, which is actually, what is your CRM vision? What are you trying to deliver for the customer? Then think about the way that you want to set up the organization to run that. Then think about the technology that services that. Even now, in fact, even yesterday I had a conversation with someone where they were thinking technology first rather than thinking about what are we going to do with this technology and how do we want to run the business. So that I had a great time at Aesop. It's an amazing brand. And essentially my role there was to help the brand continue the conversation beyond the store, beyond the physical store. So this was pre-COVID. COVID helped to accelerate that e-commerce capability. Was there for about 2 years. Then went to work for the group for a year, where I looked after CRM and personalization across the four brands. And then latterly worked with Avon International to help them with their CRM and personalization capabilities. And Avon, again, is a great learning point, because there's a business that has a dual business model. So a relatively small percentage of their overall revenue comes from selling direct to customer. Mm. And one of the markets was they were using Shopify for that piece. But the majority of the business was B2B2C, so selling through their amazing reps around the world, of which at the time I think they had about 5 million reps, generally women, who were acting as essentially brand ambassadors, selling to their friends, families, and network. So again, thinking about that, the two types of customer that you have. So you've got the direct customer, and then you've got the reps that you also have to service in some way to get them to be confident and give them the ability to sell on to their customers. And that, in a nutshell, is 25 years worth of CRM and personalization and data and loyalty experience.
What's been your favorite brand to work with?
Well, I'd have to say, so agency side.
Yeah.
I loved working with Disney. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Disney project that we had, we were helping Disney at the time reset their CRM vision in EMEA, as they called it. So we essentially went around the EMEA territories to the different parts of the Disney business. So, the cruise business, the theme parks, retail, publishing, .com, to try and create a unified view of what CRM meant for Disney. And probably the highlight of the whole process was we created an amazing video for Disney at the time that took elements of each of their blockbuster films and added it to the CRM narrative that we wanted to tell. I've still got a copy of that somewhere. And it's just a lovely piece of work that we did just to engage the customer with, the client with. So that was, I really enjoyed Disney. And then with client side over the last 4 or 5 years, of those 4 brands, all lovely brands. Yeah. I'd have to say that working with Aesop was an amazing experience. I count myself as really lucky to have spent 2.5 years there, because the culture of the organization was just amazing. So if you walked into an Aesop store, the feeling that you got in the store was identical to the feeling that you'd get if you walked into head office. So there was no we're a lovely brand on the outside but horrible behind the scenes. Completely, they not only did they talk the talk, they walked the walk 100%. And the level of respect and mutual respect and engagement that ran through the DNA of the business, I think was just lovely. I got to spend some time with their head office down in Melbourne on a couple of occasions, and actually that was an interesting learning point as well, because often a lot of us work remotely, and I remember at the time trying to have some conversations with with the tech teams and the data teams down in Melbourne. And because of the time difference and because of the fact that they literally are the other side of the world, there was that barrier. And often it meant me going down to Melbourne, spending 10 days down there, and literally sometimes just spending 40 minutes with a person who I was struggling to communicate with, to make a connection with through Zoom or whatever. And it was solved. Like, the problem was solved, and we knew exactly what each other meant. We looked at each other's eyes and we knew, all right, okay, that's what you mean by that. Now I understand that you're not just making this stuff up because you want an easy life. I'm not accusing any. Yeah,
fly 25 hours to do it though.
Well, yes, yeah, that's true. It's true. But a great brand to work with.
Cool.
I think even when you go in stores, like, I'm a massive Aesop fan. Like, my
Love
bathroom's
it.
full of it. My bank balance is not quite so forgiving, but but even when you like going to the stores, it really is like something to beat, isn't it? Like, I've never had a bad experience in terms of people like going out of their way to actually wanting to help you.
So that's the thing. So again, as marketeers, so you can understand why the retail teams didn't want me to ruin that experience by asking 15 questions at the point of sale. But that idea of helping customers, I think, is important, because we need to find, as marketeers, is our focus helping customers, or is our focus helping customers to buy more from us? Right? So I know there's a fine balance, because the CFO will focus on the latter part of that conversation. Mm-hmm. The CMO will focus on the first part of it. But it's it is about finding the balance. And I think that Aesop, I think they get that. You go to the store because you love the experience. You can't always get to a store. So my role was to facilitate understanding what you'd bought in the store, and then talking to you afterwards, because you may have been a visitor to London. You know, if I was coming down from York, there isn't really an Aesop store near me. So I would probably find the store by accident, may not come back down again. So how can you use CRM e-commerce? You can never replicate the in-store experience, but you can try and continue the brand feeling through your e-commerce and through your CRM programs.
So when you were recruited by Aesop to redefine their CRM vision, if you like, where did you start? Like, because with some of the smaller brands, not quite so much of a global scale and so on, there's the kind of like getting started with your flows and your automated emails at different touch points. But with a brand of that scale, that's there's a lot of responsibility to maintain that really great relationship. Like, where did you even start with it? Like, in terms of understanding that customer base before you start bombarding them with emails, trying to flog everything, basically.
Well, it doesn't matter where. I don't think it matters. What matters where you do this. There are two stakeholders that you try and satisfy. So one is, you do have to do the internal piece to make sure that everyone is bought into the idea as to what CRM can deliver for the business, right, and what that vision is going to be. And in parallel to that, you spend time at the coalface, right? So you spend time with customers, understanding what they want from the brand, understanding their touch points with the brand, forgetting at this point what you're going to send them. We spent a lot of time mapping out the customer journey, right? So I remember at the time we developed a very simple 6-stage customer journey, understanding it's not rocket science, but looking at I think we use different terminology, but the awareness, consideration, purchase, repurchase, loyalty type approach, understanding the customer mindset, what they wanted to achieve at that point, what our role was in that customer journey as a brand. Think about all of the current touch points that the customer had. Think about the opportunities to elevate the brand experience. And yes, talk about product as well. Think about the barriers that we had in delivering that experience. So is there technology missing? Is there internal training missing or awareness? Is there data missing? Think about how you can start collecting that. And and map that out, and then start thinking about, okay, so to satisfy that customer need, how do I best deliver that? Yeah, is that best done through the consultant? Is that best done through the e-commerce site? Is that best done through, in the West through email? Over in the Far East, it was about, using Kakao Talk in Korea or Line in Japan. So understanding the nuances for each market and customer segment. And it doesn't have to be expensive. I remember at the time, the data that we used, or the insights that we put into the customer journey work, were based on stuff that we already had, right? So, Aesop was great because they spoke to their consultants on a regular basis, and so we picked up feedback from what the consultants were saying. We had customer satisfaction programs that talked to customers. We looked at our transactional data. And then we put the brand ethos in there, because at the top of this customer journey, sitting above it, is the North Star for the brand, right? So what is the brand there to deliver? Mm-hmm. So you have that at the top, and then you just work through it. And it becomes a living, breathing customer journey, because the customer journey that you create 5 years ago is probably not fit for purpose today. And then you can start thinking about how you then break down each individual component, so that you go into the detail of, okay, all right, so if we're going to do this as part of a welcome journey, the welcome journey in the UK will be email based. What does that welcome journey look like that is right for the customer and the brand? I remember the time at Aesop, when we did this, we refashioned the welcome journey so that the welcome was no longer from Aesop. It was from the store that you made your first purchase in, because we wanted to cement the relationship between customer and store. Consultants love that. We try to elicit feedback from the customers, because often one of the things that personalization and CRM teams should do is, sometimes it's okay to personalize by stopping doing things. Yeah. So for example, if someone has just spent, I don't know, £15 on a lip balm, is the next thing I should talk to them about a £150 fragrance? Mm-hmm. Probably not, right? And again, by understanding the customer and how customers became our hero customers, we knew that they normally went through some kind of a journey, which was they become comfortable with one category, that might be body, and then you can move them, build. Yeah. And then you can move them to skin or to home. So the welcome journey, and we stopped selling them other stuff, which went down really well before, because it might have taken them 30 days to understand whether the hydrator that they bought was working for them. So how can you possibly try and sell them more stuff if you don't know whether they're happy with that current product? So, start big. You can't boil the ocean. Start big in terms of mapping out the customer journey, but then you can't solve all of that in one go. You can't boil that ocean. So think about the key components of where you think you can add value quickly. And I looked at, again, I like to look at things relatively simply. I looked at the beginning, the middle, and the end of those journeys to see where we could add value, because we wanted to make sure that we converted more of those first-time customers into second-time customers. We wanted to look at that cross-category spell in the middle of the journey, because we knew that was a key stepping stone for customers to become a hero customers. And then we looked at the end. It was what can we do with customers who were beginning to lapse or hadn't bought for a while, or who weren't engaging with our communications. So, and then you build from there, and then you end up with what other brands have, which is 200 automated customer journeys. It seems a bit excessive to me, but that's where technology allows you to go sometimes.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the one to interpret 200 results and try to understand where. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you can get to that point where there's so many journeys that all have like a number of revenue assigned to them, but it's like, but we could be doing better maybe, but because there's so much going on,
So I call that CRM lasagna. Right? So, because of my Italian heritage, I've had a few lasagnas in my time. Right? So, and what happens these days is that, in fact, my mother ended up doing this, bless her soul. She ended up adding more and more layers to this lasagna, more pasta, more sauce,
great.
more cheese, right? More boiled egg, more meatballs. And you end up not understanding where the flavour comes from.
Yeah.
So well, if you've got 150 programs, where's the value, right?
Yeah.
So would you be better off with just
What do you have
25?
picking out of that? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree.
And to that point, what do you think that, in your experience, that people often get really wrong and don't tend to fix? What are those that maybe it's having too many automations or not understanding the user journey? But is there any been big standout things that you see brands doing with CRM that are like, these are just no-nos because of X, Y, or Z?
Better yet, what have you done wrong?
Yeah. How long have we got? Right. Yeah. So I think one big mistake is thinking you can cut and paste.
Yeah.
Right? Thinking that because you've done this at brand X, you can deliver that at brand Y. Mm-hmm. That to me is completely wrong. The second thing is thinking that you need to deliver the final solution, the whole program, before you get started, right? So you have to design the whole thing, it's all in place, and then you press this magic button and everything gets solved. If you try to do that, you'll never launch anything. So you have to start, I think you have to start small. Sometimes that's difficult in a large organization where they want you to deliver the earth, the world, pretty quickly. So I think start small, and don't think that because you don't have a particular data point, so I can't surface this new journey because I don't think that's quite true, right? You can often use, if there's a level of personalization you want to deliver, but you don't have that data point, and you're normally using half a dozen data points for a particular program, why not use that program to collect the data point that you think's missing, right? Because at some point, if you think, I'm not going to start this program for 6 months because I don't have the data, it's like, well, when are you going to start collecting the data? So think about, this is not, I'm not explaining myself that 100% right, but think small. I think think about what you can do now and do it. Don't wait for 6 months. So that's certainly some things that people should learn from my mistakes, and be open about the mistakes that you make. Right. Yeah. So I think it's really important that you share your successes, but be open about where things have gone wrong and why they've gone wrong. Because I think that I remember the one thing that my CMO didn't like, not surprisingly, was surprises. Right. So he didn't want to hear something from another part of the business. So you need to be open and frank about, what, we've messed this up. Right. It's better that the CMO knows from you and not from the CEO or the CFO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes... And to your point around, like, missing data, interestingly, we were chatting with the guys over at Gray's in our previous episode, and actually it was really interesting to learn how they infer data from other points of behaviour.
Yeah.
All right, we might not know exactly who's a mum and who's not a mum, but if they've bought X, Y, and Z in this particular bundle at this time of year, they might well be
suggesting a few things
and so on, and using inferred ideas.
I had worked with a big supermarket chain who sold a brand of clothing, and as part of the preference program for the customer, they'd not asked for salutation or gender, and so they said, well, we don't know whether we should send them male clothing or female clothing or kids clothing, because we don't know who they are. And I said, well, have you been sending these people emails before? And they said yes. I said, well, why don't you just look at what they clicked on? And it may not be 100% right, yeah, but it's close enough, right? It gives you that starting point. Yeah. So I think that inferring by using a close data point. Yeah. is just as good. And also I remember working for a skincare company where they were reticent to ask the customers what skin type they were, because they felt that, well, the customers, do they really know what skin type they are? But probably best if we work it out for them. And my perspective was, well, hold on a second. But if the customer is telling you that they think they have combination skin and they're buying products for a mature skin, surely that then becomes a conversation point for you to have with a customer, because you're saying this, you're doing that, let's have a chat. And if you're unsure, come into one of our stores and speak to a consultant, or go to our e-commerce site because we've got a skin diagnostic tool that can help you do that. So again, it's about being slightly clever with the data that you have and the data that you don't have.
And I feel like when you're in the trenches of these kind of strategies, you get a feel for what's right and what's wrong in action, don't you? Like, we've just been starting some ads for our own agency, and I'm learning so much about what type of content people get interested in, what's a good number of clicks I might get in a certain day. And you start getting that feel, and almost like in my head, I'm starting to paint pictures of people around the data that I'm seeing. Whereas if I put all of the data into a lovely big presentation, I feel like it'd be really difficult for me to deliver that context of that day to day. So, if you've inferred a data point around skin type, for example, based on everybody buying extra thick moisturizer or something like that, you're probably going to, and then you roll out that campaign to all those people and you realize, oh shit, it's like 0.1% of people actually clicking this. You're going to get a feel for actually whether that was a really good inferred data point or
100%
or not, right?
But also, I also think that one of the things that you realize is that the world is a very unpredictable place, right? So how can we legitimately think that we can predict exactly what customers are going to do? It's impossible, right? I remember doing some work with a credit card company, and we sent out a credit card acquisition piece of work, and it worked really well. So we thought, well, next time we'll do this. We'll do it exactly the same. Timing was the same. Segmentation was the same. Creative was the same. Offer was the same. Bombed, right? Well, how's that? And luckily at the time we were privy to some looking at market data to understand what competitors were doing. And what we realised was that during our first campaign, no one else in our competitor set had done anything. The second time we ran the campaign, a whole bunch of other brands were doing exactly the same thing. So the first time we did it, inbox or the post box, literally it was our communication. The next time we did it, there were half a dozen other brands doing the same thing. So, it's really difficult to kind of do that prediction because stuff just happens, right, that you have no control over. And you probably won't know that other brands are doing that. Yeah. You won't know if other brands are necessarily doing a product launch that week or running a promotion, which is why, again, also, I think it's key to be flexible in terms of what you're doing and try and be agile and reactive to what's happening in the marketplace. So, if you're sending out a campaign that you think is going out to 1 million people, you know what? You don't send out 1 million emails at once. You stagger that to see what kind of reaction you're getting. You're doing some A/B testing on whether it's subject line or content or timing, so that you learn as you go along, and get the most from that campaign.
What is your opinion on being really straight with customers and saying, tell me, in terms of when we have these sign-up forms, I have all these extra fields in that can be a bit of a barrier to actually getting customers on board. Do you think customers really know what the answers about them? I mean, obviously the obvious ones like birthday and so on, but maybe the more specific cohorts of customers about things they want to hear about. Do you think that's actually important, or do you think it's easier to learn from the data and you make that decision for them?
Both. Yeah. So I think that when you're collecting customer data or customer preferences, don't try and make it too complicated, but be open about why you're using that data. So as an example, I did some work with a baby foods company who offered weaning advice with their foods. And we had that field there, which was give us your baby's date of birth. And that field was populated by about 30% of parents. And we wanted to up that rate because obviously the weaning advice that we gave was based on the age of the child, right? So we did a very simple thing. There was a little hover facility over that field, and when you went over there, we explained the reason we want to collect this piece of data is not because we're going to send happy birthday emails, it's because our advice is based on the age of your child. All of a sudden, that data field population went up from 30% to 80%. So if you explain to customers why you want that data, I think it helps. I think it's also important to make a commitment that how you're going to use that data and stick to it, right? So don't go off and do something else with that. But I'm also a keen advocate on the idea that customer behavior out-trumps their profile data. Yeah. So you could be telling me, if you're subscribing to a TV broadcaster or to Netflix, that I love Scandinavian film noir and French film noir, but all I'm actually watching is Schitt's Creek, right? You're gonna go, I think that what you're watching is a better indicator than what you've told me in your profile. But I think it's finding the balance.
Yeah, I think it's really true, because even like I'm a big fan of Percival, the clothing brand, and like if they actually asked me what I want to be shown, I'd have probably answered chinos and t-shirts.
Yes.
But since then, they've shown me their suits, they've shown me their jumpers, and I love it. And I'm like, if you actually asked me to select those options, I probably wouldn't have done, because I'd have thought I'm going to be inundated with so many emails. But there's another brand that I'm not going to name names, which is like the polar opposite. I literally probably receive like 3 or 4 emails a day. I love the brand, but I'm absolutely overwhelmed with their level of comms, and they don't have that managed preferences piece. So it is the opposite problem, really, in terms of actually there is a level, isn't there, whereby I am literally receiving 3 or 4 emails from you a day. You're pissing me off now. I love your brand, I love the products, and I do buy from you, but my God, I want to know about you, but I'm getting to the point where I'm probably going to just unsubscribe. And I imagine, as much as I love the brand, it probably is going to make me spend less money, because I'll be less reminded of them and actually be less exposed to them. You mentioned a bit about the UI of the site in terms of that impact to CRM. In your previous roles, how much input have you guys had in terms of the on-site piece?
A massive, because again, it all boils down to what the customer is trying to do. I remember, I've done work with house builders, right? So with the UI for the development, what is the right time to get a prospective home buyer to book an appointment to come view a property, right? Is it as soon as they land on your page? Probably not, right? But how many times is it you land on someone's page and the first thing they want you to do is refer a friend? It's not like, I haven't even bought anything yet, right? So how can I refer a friend, or sign up for my emails straight away? Give me a chance. Yeah. So again, it's understanding the customer, looking at the analytics around, in reality. So we would look at things like, we'd look at conversion rate for getting people to book an appointment, how many people turned up, who went on to put a deposit down for a house, who ended up completing. And we look at all of those analytics to try and work out, go back to the customer and work out what is actually the best sequence of events for the customer, right? So how many of those people who you almost crowbar into booking an appointment because they can't access the rest of the site until they do that, how many of those actually turned up on the day? I'd imagine it's fewer than people who you talk to at the right moment, because they've gone to a development, they've started looking at a particular property type. You know what? That's probably the better time to offer them an appointment to come view a property and to speak to one of your sales consultants.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this all day. I have a real problem with the way we attribute sales in e-commerce, to be honest. Like, some of the attribution windows for like Meta is like 7 days. I'm like, whenever I buy anything now, just because of the industry that I'm in, I always try and like reverse engineer it on myself to see, actually, why did I buy that? Even when I started trying out Aesop soaps, for example, when did I first see them? My friend saw them actually, and I liked it. Then I walked past them about 3 times in a number of stores over London. And then I tried the little squirty thing that was outside the store. And then it was probably then I saw an ad and was like, actually, I'm going to give it a go. And then that's when I'm hooked. We had a wall built, this glass wall behind the camera in the office. And I was actually like, I was thinking about this wall for about 6 months before. I went on Google and found a few suppliers. And that actual attribution window is so much longer than I think marketers give, even agency side, give it due course, really. Ads we run, I always think, well, people are clicking on them now. So in a year's time, I reckon, because of our price of goods and price of service, if I keep talking to them for that long, some of them are going to probably go, actually, I've seen them around, and it's keeping that in mind.
Well, the brands that I mentioned that I worked with was BMW, right? So again, an automotive brand. no one buys a car some people might buy a car every week, but I certainly don't buy a car every week.
I'd like to.
Yeah, it's a 3 to 5 year cycle, right?
Yeah.
So you need to bear that in mind. So even if you own that, you own a BMW, they've probably run propensity models to work out in reality when is the best time to talk to me again about the next purchase. Yeah, but if you bought their car on a PCP or some kind of a loan agreement, they're talking to you every 6 months because they're telling you what you've paid and your outstanding amount. There's an opportunity to keep the brand front of mind. How do you help me get the most out of my car over the next 3 years, right? So if you're sending me newsletters, when it comes to the winter newsletter, you probably want to talk to me about making sure that my antifreeze is topped up and my washer fluid is topped up, and do I need to get my tyres checked and brakes checked at the local dealership? So it's about thinking about the life cycle of the product that you're selling. If you're Asda, you want me to come in every week to do my grocery shopping. Yeah, but if I'm buying a house or buying a car or buying agency services, it's a longer sell, right? So you need to bear that in mind when you think about how you manage your funnel, right? Yeah.
Do you think businesses maybe over-obsess attribution of where, when they're trying to decide where to reinvest? Everyone goes, well, our Facebook ads gets us this much revenue a year, and then it was very segmented channel view of. Do you think that attribution is really important, or do you think it's a bigger picture?
I think it often depends on how the business is structured. Because if you've got different departments bidding for money, yeah, you kind of go, well, I need to show that that sale needs to come to me, right? Because I want bigger budget next year. But that's why I think it's important to think of the customer at the center of all this and think about the customer journey. So you can think about those different touch points and how little nudges along the journey finally ends up in a sale. But I think that you're not going to get around the attribution piece because it's a key to getting budget from the CFO, right? So I think attribution it will always be important because marketeers want the money to run their campaigns, right? But I often find that it's an issue where it's siloed, but also as well, again, I worked for another TV broadcaster who the acquisition team didn't talk to the retention team, and so the acquisition team were really happy about their numbers because they were getting the numbers through the door, reporting to the city about all these new customers they were acquiring. And the retention team were going, why are we losing all these customers after 3 months? They're just churning. And what was happening was that the acquisition team were running these amazing deals through really cheap acquisition channels and offering these 3-month deals that you could then disappear after 3 months, these trials. And the retention team were going, why are we losing all these customers after 3 months? And it wasn't until I sat in the middle and got the two teams talking to each other that you kind of realize, well, hold on a second. This channel is really cheap for you to acquire new customers. Yeah. But in terms of long-term value, long-term customer lifetime value, it's pointless because they end up churning after 3 months and you're then having to reacquire. And we then found that some of the more expensive acquisition channels actually drove better customer lifetime value because these customers, we spent more money in acquiring them, but when they rang the call center, they weren't ringing for more information and spending 10 minutes on the call center finding out more about the packs. They were there to buy. They ended up buying the more expensive packs and stayed for longer. So yes, that channel might seem to be expensive as an acquisition channel, but when you look at ultimate cost of acquisition in comparison to customer lifetime value, it was cheap.
I've seen this quite a lot actually, in terms of it. Like we've segmented marketing efforts so much in a business, and I've seen it, even not to name names, but with some of the brands that we've worked with over the years. In terms of it always surprised me so much why people that are managing their ads agency never talk to the people that are improving where you're pushing all this traffic to. It's hang on a minute, you're saying the bounce rate is really high on this page. We're all looking at this page, scratching our head going, pretty good, right? But we're not thinking about the type of traffic we're getting, or vice versa, actually. The page might be poor, but the ads might be brilliant, and so on. We see that time and time again. And we, as an agency, we always say let's all have a call, bring the other agencies in and actually just talk about it. Because really, our work is the KPIs we're all measuring are way more interlocked than everybody likes to sort of pretend, I think, which is interesting.
It is, because I remember working for an agency where we ran the email campaigns, the acquisition campaigns, and the retention campaigns for an insurance company, and we were tasked with click to conversion, and yet we had no control over what sat on the website. Mm-hmm. So how could we be responsible for click to conversion? I can give you opens, I can give you clicks, but that last leg, if we're not in control of that or working closely alongside the e-commerce agency, how can we be held responsible for that?
It's very, very true. So, Jan, a little birdie tells me that you've just released a book.
That is true. Available at all good booksellers.
Amazing. Tell us about it. What led you to writing a book? And maybe
How long
a little
has it
bit
taken you as well?
Well, so I think I got the original idea about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
I was doing a presentation. I remember it was up in Leeds, and just flippantly, I said to the audience, "If I turned this stuff into a book, would you buy it?" And about 50% of the audience put their hands up and said yes. I thought, well, that's a bit of market research. I've seen worse.
50% of them.
Yeah.
I've got my proof of concept
The
now.
odds are good. The odds are good.
So I kind of thought I might do this. Work gets in the way, family gets in the way, in a good way, obviously. And I thought, well, let me do this. And the reason that I've written the book is called In Pursuit of the Trivial, a book about nothing, is there are lots of experts in this world. There are people who are much smarter than me, have done this for longer than me, in the world of CRM, personalization, data, loyalty. I kind of know some of this stuff, but I thought I'd write about it in a slightly different way, from a different perspective, which is why my book doesn't have chapters. It has these 7 or so perspectives, and I'll talk about a particular thing that's been of interest to me in the world of CRM and loyalty and personalization, but perhaps approach it in a slightly different way. So the customer journey piece is called Why Are Basketball Players Tall? The bit about cohort analysis and recency, frequency, value starts with a section on the day I stopped eating pizza for 6 months, which is a story in its own right. And so I just, it's a book about nothing, right? It's a book about 7 things that I thought were really interesting. There are a few anecdotes in there, a few jokes. My mother's recipe for lasagna is in there.
I'm sold. I've heard about the layers,
the flavour and the layers.
So, I know that there's a famous author or critic. I don't know if it was an author or a critic that said that everyone has a book in them, and in most cases that's where it should stay. I've had that thought in my mind on a few occasions, but I thought, what, let's go and do it, and I can call myself an author.
Nice. Where can we buy it?
Everywhere.
Nice.
Amazon. Come to my website, cuzziol.com.
Love it. We'll pop
Send me an email.
We'll pop a link with this video, so any listeners that's interested in buying it can head straight over. Well, I really wish you all the best with the book launch.
No,
I'm super excited.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, not at all. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.
25 years working in CRM at different touch points of a customer's journey. What a wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you so much for joining us on CharleChats, the Ecommerce Podcast. Please follow us on socials, head over to our website, and we'll be back again real soon.